Welcome to the Vendetta Effect.
And welcome back to the Vendetta Effect. And with me this week is Webby.
Hey guys, I'm Webby and I play Doc, and I'm lonely.
He's all alone. Last week, when we left you, you had gone in and talked to Bradshaw, and he had asked...
Bradford?
Bradford. Why do I say Bradshaw? I don't know. Yeah, Bradford. I'm glad you remember his name. And he had asked you to go see Albert Einstein because he had asked for you.
Oh, so, yeah.
There we go.
I remember that.
Yeah, it's been a while, I know.
I remember that now, but I completely forgot about that. Yeah, okay. We're good.
No problem. And so you, as far as I know, we're going to go do that. Yep. This is now you know that he currently lives in New Jersey. Albert's been alive for a very long time. And he is getting ready to give a speech, and for some strange reason has asked for you.
Hopefully it's for recommendations on where he could move other than Jersey.
I think isn't Princeton in New Jersey? I can't remember why he was there. There was a reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was it. But, yeah. So.
Ugh. All right. I guess I'll go to Jersey.
I'm going to Jersey.
I'm gonna go see Q before I leave. Or Zed, rather. Not Q.
Zed, not Q.
Zed. I'm going to need a gas mask, lots of disinfectant. Maybe some hazmat gear. Yeah, we're going to Jersey, man.
That bad, is it? I myself have never been there.
It is the armpit of the United States, Zed.
Indeed. All right. Certainly, if you take one of those and he points at a random briefcase and maybe that one there, and he points up onto a top shelf with a smaller case and says, "You're welcome to take those if you feel you must."
I give him an already filled out, and I give him a nod, and I take both briefcases and leave his office.
He smiles when you hand him the form. He looks over at you and says, "Good luck."
I just nod.
And off you go.
Okay. To
Jersey. So.
Do I have an address where I need to meet him?
Yeah, he is actually living in Princeton at this point in time, and has been living there for the better part of 20 years. So you arrive. It is late, 1955. His house is, it's just on a regular street, but it's just a tall 2-story home. It's all white with black shutters. And like I said, it doesn't look out of place with sort of like the post-colonial style. With the porches and that kind of thing. So it's, it doesn't really stand out in the area, but it's a nice house, and it's well groomed and taken care of. And as you come to the area, you can see there's not a lot going on there. It seems kind of quiet, but it's...
what time of day is it?
It's, I'd say about 2 o'clock in the afternoon by the time you got there with plane and everything. A few days, like about a day later.
Okay. And I'm assuming I'll get out of the cab. I'm assuming I took a cab to this place. I'll get out of the cab and walk up to his front porch and knock on his door.
And you hear a voice muffled in the background saying, "Come in, come in."
I will do so. And I'll stand right in front of his front door after I close it. Dr. Einstein?
I presume. You see a old man. I mean, he looks like Albert Einstein, so I don't have to describe. But
right. Frizzled hair everywhere.
Yeah, the frizzled hair, the mustache. It's a lot whiter than it is in some pictures, and he looks frail and kind of old. He has a cane. But, you know, I mean, he still looks relatively healthy for his age. At this point, he looks you up and down and says, "Ah, Doc, hello. Welcome to my home."
I will take off my hat and give him a nod. He says, "Yes, I'm Doc." And he just kind of squints. Like, he realizes probably in the last, ever since he joined this organization, I don't think anyone's ever called me by my actual name.
He smiles at that. And he says, "Please have a seat, would you, sir?"
I'll nod and politely sit down on his living room area.
Okay.
I was told you wanted to meet with me.
Yeah, he smiles at that, and he looks down. And he says, "How are you at giving speeches?"
Not the greatest. I'm not really the talker kind of person.
Oh, so you don't want to give my speech for me? That's disappointing.
I'm really curious as to why you wanted to meet with me. If this was about a speech, I mean, they should have sent Spencer.
He smiles at you and he says, "From what I understand, Mr. Spencer is not well known for his ability to hold his tongue. Let's just say I'm just bored of having to do this, but I am preparing a speech to commemorate the establishment of Israel. They seem to like me over there for some reason." And
interesting.
He smiles at that. He says, "For some strange reason, the old Jews seem to be important to them. I don't know why." But he sits down across from you at the chair, and he says, My problem is that I've been having a little bit of heart trouble, but mostly my problem is I need someone who can carry out something for me, something actually useful."
Well, I mean, I might, as long as it's a speech, I might be able to assist you in that. I could probably also assist you in possibly your heart problem. I mean, my area of expertise is anatomy and biology.
At the end of the day, it is what it is. But my concern is, son, that we have the ability now to destroy humanity, both on the East and the West. Something that is very dangerous for us to have, and something very disconcerting to me. I don't know your feelings on the matter, but from what I understand from Bradford, he recommended that you would be the one to talk to about this.
Of course. I mean, I can relate.
He says, and I understand that some are talking about trying to reach out to the other side to make some sort of agreement amongst themselves to try and live in a more peaceful manner. one of the things that concerns me is that we have all these threats I keep hearing about, all these threats from the other side, all the threats from our side, and yet we don't think about what's in space, what could be threatening us from other worlds. I mean, I know my math has told me that it would be very difficult for someone to get here, but it's not out of the realms of possibility, and our world is not united enough.
Okay, John, now correct me. This is after our experience that we had in
Japan
this or something?
Yes, this is after Japan, before Russia.
Okay. Right, but after we were already infected by like those nano things, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And Doc did inquire, and he would be privy to the fact that those are alien in nature.
And he would, yes, and he'd be privy to the idea that the white box that was given to the government at the end of last season seemed alien in nature as well.
Okay. So Doc will arch his eyebrow, take out a notebook, like just a small notepad and a pen. And he'll look at Einstein. So sounds so weird to say. Doctor, what do you know of alien life?
I know only what I have heard in the papers and what the government doesn't like to tell everyone else. And he smiles at that.
Well, what if I told you it wouldn't be as hard as maybe you theorized for them to get here?
He smiles at you and says, God's a very strange overlord. I can imagine that there may be even things I haven't thought of yet that could allow that, yes.
All right. So, with what you've told me so far, and the topic we seem to be discussing, what is it you'd like me to carry out for you?
Well, my feeling is, and I have shared this with your employers and with your president, our president, I guess I should say, I am an American after all, is that at the end of the day, I think if what I hear is true, what the scuttlebutt runs around my university says, then I think we are looking at an invasion of some sort. And it's something that makes me very nervous. There are stars immemorial in the sky. We are not able to count them as of yet. Who knows how many planets ring each one of these, and how many beings there might be on each of these things. And while maybe they cannot go as fast as the speed of light, certainly they could get here. Certainly they could influence us. I'm not foolish enough to believe that that can't happen. And in my estimation, I think it's worthwhile for us to start preparing for that eventuality. And I think the largest way to do that is for us to try and unify, create some sort of unity amongst ourselves. And while I know it seems strange coming to an organization like Shush and asking them to do it, I do think it might be necessary.
Well, I do think with what our organization deals with on a very consistent basis, we would probably be the most apt for being able to handle something like this. As for unification,
I'm not talking about a full-on, we all sing around the campfire and all of that kind of thing. What I'm talking about here is more a organization that can handle things on a worldwide perspective without being hung up on which side of the communist wall they live on. If you get my meaning.
Doc will nod.
Some of my colleagues over there have suggested similarly.
Well, I mean, Shush does have embassies throughout the world, and we do assist other countries, but as you know, the world will always be at war somewhere.
I'm sure. However, I'll put it this way. Some years ago, I was given a document when I unfortunately had to live in Germany when I had to escape the Nazis. A friend of mine over there can certainly point you to the right way. But Heinrich Hertz had the document. And let me just say it. Put the fear of this into my head. And it's not something I talk about with a lot of people, but it's something that has driven me to make some of the decisions I made later. I mean, after all, you don't go from a simple patent clerk to a celebrity, he jokingly says, by thinking small.
I completely understand, and I agree. Doc kind of looks off in like the distance. Like he has like this look in his eyes, like he understands being ridiculed for his work, but also knowing the importance of it in one fashion or another.
Yep.
Well, I would certainly love to go to Germany and meet with whatever contact you have to try to find these files. And I think the biggest problem most people might have, and why another reason I think Shush would be good for this endeavor, is people would hear this or read about these things and either disregard them as hearsay or try to immediately figure out some sort of peaceful resolution. You know, everybody wants to be that person to find an alien and make a treaty, whereas that's all fine and good. But you should respect the situation, and if they're here for other means, we should be ready and prepared.
Indeed. And by no means do I mean to say that everyone and everything that we ever run up against would be some sort of enemy that we have to fear. It's more the fact that we need to be prepared. You can't assume that somebody that can make a machine that travels across stars in the same time it takes us to travel from here to the grocery store is somehow going to always be on our side, always looking out for us. We certainly didn't do it when we met the natives in this country.
He'll nod.
So, with that in mind, I think it is important that we prepare, be ready. Look at the things the clues that are about, and maybe piece things together a little bit.
And who's your contact in Germany?
Well, I haven't talked to him very, very long time, but my first contact would probably be Heinrich Hertz in Hamburg. But failing that, you could talk to Hans Grudenberg.
Doctor arches eyebrows, like, okay. And they would know the location of these files?
They would know the location of what we found, yes. Files might be giving them too much credit.
Okay.
But I think the words on it are concerning, shall we say.
Well, I will definitely look into this, Doctor. And he just kind of slowly starts nodding and staring down at his notepad.
Mm-hmm. And Albert smiles at you, and you can see him kind of close his eyes for a bit. and kind of drift off like sometimes old people do. And then his eyes kind of open up a bit. And he kind of looks at you with clear blue eyes very briefly, and he just says, "You know what? I think it's tasteless to prolong life artificially. I think I've done my share. Time to go. But when I go, I will do it elegantly. Don't you think that's important?"
I do. Doc is looking at him quizzically, like almost studying him, as if for signs if he also has maybe encountered these micro machines for all intents and purposes, like what Doc had.
Yeah.
Is there any type of clue that would give that away?
Nothing gives it away that you can tell, but your suspicions are definitely alight that something is off.
I'll just flat out ask him. I'll describe what they looked like, and I'll say, "Have you ever encountered things like this?"
Not as such, my friend. But let's just say I've been around a little too long. And he pats your knee. And he stands up and walks over to a window and looks out. And he says, "But not too much longer, I think."
Well, if there's anything else I can do to assist you, or put your mind at ease, or if there's anything else that you care to share with me.
He looks over at you and he says, "Someday, when you have the opportunity, I know you're in the medical profession, so this will be important to you. You will want to look at the molecular level of things. As I look up at the stars and look at things from a wider perspective, shall we say, I think for your fields, looking at a narrower one would be something important, something worth doing. But, as my ancient mother used to say, you can't do everything without doing something. So how about you go do something? And I will go do my lousy speech." And he then mutters to himself about something in Yiddish and walks up and grabs his paper and his pen. And he looks at you and says, "If you need anything, please let me know. But that's all I can give you for now, friend."
No, that's more than enough, Doctor. Good luck with your speech, and looks like I'll be traveling to Germany ASAP.
Make sure it's West Germany. You wouldn't want to go across the border. He smiles at that to himself. And with that, I assume you walk out?
Yep.
Okay. You get on the airplane to Germany after that, or do you do something else?
No, I'll get on the airplane. I'll just go straight to Germany.
Okay, so you go back to the airport. When you get there, as I know Doc is good at these kind of things, I assume you let Bradford know what's happened, and you hop on the plane with your passport and your documents and head to Germany.
Yep.
When you arrive, you find out that Albert Einstein had passed away overnight.
Okay.
And he'd had a heart attack.
He knew it was coming.
That would be your guess.
Or he caused it himself.
Questions. Eh? And when you get to Hamburg, who do you look up first?
Heinrich Hertlocker.
Heinrich Hertz.
Yeah.
Okay, when you go to inquire about a Heinrich Hertz, you only hear that there is no one by that name that lives in the area.
Do I have access to either a government computer of some fashion? Probably not. Or a telephone.
You have access to a telephone, yes. And a telephone book if you want it.
No, I will call.
The other Hans?
No, not yet. I'm going to call a contact, one of my contacts in the government, and I want to know if Heinrich Hertz might be listed under any other aliases.
They say they don't know anybody by that name, but they do say that one of the guys says, I think he was, isn't that the old physicist from like the 1800s? And kind of quizzically says, I think he died in like 1889.
Okay.
Or 1894, he says. Sorry, I got the wrong date.
Well, I mean, it's been a while since good old Einstein has been here, so, sure. I'll look up the other guy then.
Okay, so you look up the other guy. He works at the university. Let me just... see out here. Can't remember if he's fictional or not, so I'm just verifying that before I make up his stuff. Oh. Oh, okay. Yeah. No, he's a living person. So he answers the phone. He is a visiting scholar at the University of Bonn. And he says, hello, how can I help you?
Now, does he answer it in German?
No, he answers in English, actually. And then
we are in Germany, though?
Yeah, he answers in English at first, and then he switches to German after he says that. Guten Tag, wie geht es Ihnen?
Okay, I'll speak in English, knowing that he speaks English, but I do know German, John.
Yep, fair enough. He says, "Oh, hello, sir. How can I help you?"
Hi, I'm Dr. Galahad, and I was sent in your direction, or I was pointed your direction by one Dr. Einstein.
Oh, Albert, that sneaky man. He knew I was here. I knew he'd know. I knew it. Even in death, that man won't leave me alone. Even though I'm only visiting my mother-in-law. Ugh. Yes.
I was wondering if I could possibly trouble you for... Perhaps we could get a lunch or just drinks. There are a few things I'd like to discuss with you.
Certainly. Where are you at the moment?
I give him my location.
Okay, he says, it'll take me a couple of hours, but you can meet me at the town square.
Okay. Couple hours it is. I look forward to meeting with you.
That would be wonderful. I hope you have a good morning. I'll see you soon.
Okay, and then I give him the name, or he can give me the name of like a bistro or some cafe or something like that.
Yeah, he just gives you like a local cafe not too far away.
Yep, and Doc will go there.
Okay, so you travel around Hamburg. Hamburg at this point in time is a very modern-looking city compared to what it probably would have looked like if it hadn't been bombed almost out of existence. And there's a lot of construction going on even at this point. still recovering from the end of World War II, so it is a very different place from what it was, like, say, in the 30s. Okay. But when, after you've been at the cafe for a bit, you see this older gentleman, kind of balding. He's wearing glasses, and he's looking around as he comes up towards the cafe. I assume you're sitting out on a patio or something?
Yep, out near the street. As long as the weather's nice. I probably have a coffee in front of me that I'm not drinking.
Fair enough. He walks up and he says, "Are you Mr. Galahad?"
I'll stand up and extend my hand. I am. And your name again?
It's Hans Grunberg.
Hans, yes, that's right.
Yes. You were saying you had information from Albert.
Yeah, I met with Dr. Einstein the day before he passed, actually.
I see.
Was it just a day or two ago at this point?
Yeah, a day or so ago, yeah.
He wanted to speak with me specifically regarding a situation that he felt strongly about. And one that he said that he had read some documents or some files, and it rightfully put the fear of God in him, so to speak. He said that these things were left behind in Germany when he had to flee, but that you or this other gentleman, Mr. Hertz, might know more about them.
Okay, I see. And you notice that his accent sort of dissipates. It comes much more English sounding.
Okay.
And he says, "You'll have to excuse me. The German accent kind of flips in and out. I spent the better part of 30 years in London, so I don't always have it, as it were. Students don't appreciate trying to understand my accent. But yes, he told me about this scroll. So the old professor has sent you on this hunt, has he?" "Well,
he has.
From as I understand it, my old master," and he says, looks at you and he says, "I'm a geneticist by trade. I look at the molecular structure of genes. But he tried to get a bunch of us together at one point to try and figure out what we were being told. And he had this scrap of paper that he showed me. And at the time, I was just a research fellow. I was nothing exciting or wonderful. I was simply a student. But even then, he was convinced of how important it was. So he brought a bunch of us together. And as we died, he's kept that flame alive with some of us. He says, "Here, let me take you to where Mr. Hertz is located. And we can discuss it in further detail as we go." And he stands up, says, "I hope you enjoyed the coffee."
Oh, I don't drink coffee.
Indeed. Me neither. Terrible stuff.
It was more for the appearance of it.
I see. Tea is my preference. It's an English habit. What can I say? I've gotten into it. I've gone native, as they say.
He nods.
And he smiles at you and says, "Well, come with me. We will go visit the gravesite of Mr. Hertz." And he takes you to this site. Do you have any questions while you're walking?
Not particularly while we're walking. If he's not just filling in some more blanks on the matter, Doc will actually start picking his brain and talking genetics with him. Because it is kind of, it's not necessarily Doc's area of expertise, but Doc is familiar with it and he wants to know more about it. So if this guy's a geneticist, then he's going to pick his brain and he'll probably discuss and talk about maybe some of the more elaborate testing that Doc does, and any type of things that he could possibly do to engage the field of genetics as well.
Well, in your discussions with him, what you find out about is that he is just about to become a fellow of the Royal Society. Most of his work is focused on mice and the genetics of mice. And one of the things that he has come up with is a theory which he has extrapolated from testing on humans that he's gotten some research on, and is in the process of looking further into. And he mentions the fact that there appears to be within mice trace elements of it, but within humans, much stronger elements of some gene that seems very out of the ordinary and something they haven't been able to figure out. And he says it's a late additive gene. It's late in the evolutionary cycle. It didn't enter humanity as an evolutionary trait, and that's what's made him so fascinated about it.
Now, is his research limited to only mice because he is not capable of human testing currently? Does he not have like the correct permits or the volunteers, I guess, or like the green light to go ahead for human testing, so to speak?
Well, what his role is at this point is there's a lot of testing that was done on mice based on some of the fact that they, like, the early way to start with getting to a human test subject was to start with mice, because mice were considered to be A, easy to come by, B, not considered to be cute enough to be worried about, and even to this day are used as sort of a way of understanding the way the brain works.
Right.
So there is a lot of testing of that, and that's kind of just where his expertise is animal genetics specifically. But he
does have an interest in the human aspect of it.
Yeah, and what he will tell you is that he's worked with a few colleagues that are much more into human testing and human understandings of things, and that's kind of intrigued him with some of his research. But because of his specialty coming out of college or university was, geared around the study of mice, he's sort of remained in that field.
I will give him a blank business card with just Doc's telephone number and extension at Shush. Like one that goes directly to his lab, and I will tell him, I'll just fill in the fact that, I with my particular field, I get several volunteers and several human experiments go on in my particular office, and that I would love to be able to pick his brain at further experimentation.
He says, certainly, if there's anything I can be of assistance with, please don't hesitate to contact me. I am very much intrigued by these kind of things, and certainly I have some colleagues not far from London who also are very excited about these things these days. In fact, there's some rumor that there's some old Nazi testing that they've been doing, but nothing particularly has come of it from what I understand. But that might just be scuttlebutt. It might not be true. It's hard to say.
Well, I've seen a lot of things in the past several years that if you asked me a decade ago, I would have told you that it was impossible. So.
Indeed, I will agree. A lot of things have changed over the years in ways I never imagined them, even as a young boy. I mean, good grief, we've got planes flying everywhere and faster, and I'll be honest with you, they're not things I would have even imagined just even a year or two ago, as fast as they are now, with their jets and their crazy cross-world flights.
I meant more so in the field of genetics.
Indeed. There's a lot of that as well. Has changed.
He'll point to his glasses. Say, these are also just for show. although I've needed them ever since I was a child. Within the past year or so, I was privy to something that ultimately changed I'm guessing, my genetic code, and I no longer need them. It's just now it's weird without them. Does that make sense?
He smiles at you and says, "Yes, I can see how that would work."
Anyway, enough picking your brain on these matters. Back to this. You said it was a scroll.
Indeed. He then says, "It's something old, even ancient, you might say. But we don't know a lot about it. But what I do know about it makes me a little disturbed. Von Weber loved to go on about it when he was here. He goes on about it to me often enough, even now. But I often kind of blink when he talks about it. But there was a translation done on the scroll, so we do know what it means. It's strange, to say the least."
Okay. And are you in possession of this scroll?
That's why we need to go to the graveside.
Okay.
You'll understand when we get there. And he takes you up to this graveside, and there's this large monument to this physicist up on the wall. It's been rebuilt. At one point, it looked like it had been broken, but now appears to be back in use. Oops, wrong one. 1 second, sorry. Clicked on the wrong thing. And is, well, not use, I guess. That's the wrong word, but like it's being cleaned and kept in better shape, I guess I would say.
Yeah. It's maintenance.
Yeah, like as if there's been people that actually care about it and are actually working towards keeping it up.
Yeah, it's preservation.
Mm-hmm. And he says, if you go up to the stone and tap it on the side, a button appears, for lack of a better word.
And we're at the statue?
Yep.
Doc just goes and does it.
Okay, so you walk up and you touch the side of the stone, and when you do, you feel an indentation inside of the stone. And as you push it in, a button kind of pops out. So it's almost like you push it in to pull it out. And then there's this button.
I look back at Hans.
And he nods at you.
I tap the button.
Okay. So behind the bust, the concrete or slab behind it, the granite slab, opens just slightly. And you kind of hear a bit of grinding as it opens up.
Okay. I will go and investigate and try to open it further.
Okay. As you look in, you realize that you can't walk into it. There's like a shelf there.
Oh, all right.
And on it is a small scroll, probably about, I'd say about 6 inches in width and maybe a foot long, but it's all scrolled up, so you have to unscroll it.
I will very carefully roll it.
The one thing you notice as you start to unroll it is that it feels brand new. It doesn't feel old and weathered.
Okay.
And Hans says, it's always been like that. It's so peculiar. And
now Doc does have gloves on, by the way.
Right.
Like he always has gloves. Just
immediately puts them on, yes.
Yeah.
And so you unroll it, and you can see written in kind of a slightly faded but still pretty well readable dark ink, a bunch of Hebrew letters. And then below it, something written obviously in pen at some date that there's no signatures, there's no names attached to it or anything. And it says below it, protect the world, protect yourselves, unite or die.
So I'll look at Hans and I'll say, I'm assuming what's written is in pen here is the translation for the Hebrew, correct?
As I understand it, it was a rabbi that wrote it in English, but there was German at one point. But yes.
Okay, and read it one more time for me.
It says, protect the world, protect yourselves, unite or die.
Well, I mean, this is no new news. Obviously, a force united is going to be stronger than a force divided. I'm looking at Hans the whole time.
You can see him nodding and smiling while you're saying that.
Now, how old is this scroll? Has any testing been done to it? I know it looks obviously brand new, but
the scroll itself, it unfortunately, cannot be carbon dated because nobody's been able to figure out how to cut it yet. However, when testing was done both in the actual writing and on the ink, it was found to be at the earliest date 3,000 years old. Well, not 3,000. Sorry,
and you said
2,500 years old, he says.
And you said nobody's figured out how to cut the scroll to carbon date it yet?
No. I mean, the process of carbon dating is sketchy. But, I mean, normally you cut a bit off and burn it. That's how you get the carbon release.
Right. I'm familiar with carbon dating.
Well, yeah, nobody's been able to cut that thing.
If I let go of it, does it want to roll back up?
Yep.
Okay, so I will place, if I can find like two small rocks or something, I will place one at the top and one on the bottom just to keep it unrolled. And Doc will pull out of his satchel that he carries. He will try to pull out like a scalpel or like an X-Acto knife kind of thing, like just a razor.
Yeah.
And I'm going to try to cut just a small triangle off of one of the corners.
Mm-hmm.
Am I able to do that?
It's like cutting leather with a dull knife.
I'm going to look back at Hans. I'm going to say, well, why haven't somebody just... Has the scroll always been put back here, or has it been taken and tested in like a lab?
He smiles at that and he says, well, first of all, up until the last 5 years, nobody could test this thing in any way that would make sense. Second of all, and quite literally, nobody really wants to present this to anyone who might take it as dangerous. The reality of it...
Is your role in all of this to preserve and protect this scroll, or do you mind if I take it back with me? I mean, Dr. Einstein did specifically ask my organization for me specifically, and I do have access to a lab.
He smiles at you and says, I'm sure Albert has his reasons, and I'm sure they're important. And I'm sure at some point it'll actually make sense to me, but I'm sure that's why he's called you here, is to take over. This has been kept secret for many millennia.
So you don't have any objections to me taking this scroll. I just don't want to step on toes.
He looks at you and says, this scroll survived the Nazi regime. It can survive many things.
Well, that's good. They're not the only one.
He smiles and he says, but I would be clear with you. Make sure keep it from those that do not need to know about it.
I'm good at that.
I'm sure you are. Otherwise, Albert wouldn't have asked for you.
Doc is going to take out a series of thick, like, specimen bags and pick out two of his larger ones and gently roll up the scroll and put it in a specimen bag, and then roll that bag up and then put it in another one. Roll that up and put it in a hard leather tube.
Yep.
And then seal that up and put it back in his satchel. Just to make sure that things don't contaminate it.
And he smiles at that and says, that's probably a wise idea. And he looks at you and smiles again and then says, there's one other thing you might need, though, before you head home. This also, I would request that you hold on to until the right time. If you catch my meaning.
Okay.
He says, this unfortunately came from my colleague, who, shall we say, has rather dubious allegiances in his past. But Albert trusted him enough that he was willing to let me in on his little secret. But William Weaver, as he's called in London, is carrying out some research, some genetics research, continuing a bit of a process that he had from when he was a Nazi scientist. And your government, along with the English, got him out at the end of the war. And he pulls out of a briefcase a folder and he hands it to you.
Okay, I will take it and I'll look at him and I'll say, should I read this now? Are we in a private enough area, or should I wait until I get back on my plane?
I think this is a quiet enough area that you can have a look at it.
I'll crack open the folder then.
And what you see is a folder of the first documents are all in German. They're Nazi paperwork showing a man by the name of Wilhelm von Weber, who was born in Uten, Germany. And it gives information about him and how he graduated with a PhD, and how he was then initially served in the Wehrmacht, but was in the end put in as a scientist to kind of create weapons and look at genetic research. And so one of the roles that he had was experimenting with some of those that, unfortunately weren't allowed to avoid that. And his major hypothesis is that through creating a DNA strand that they might be able to manipulate, that through mice would create a copy of a gene that may, if triggered correctly, could give humanity a new evolutionary state. To this point, he has never been able to make it work. And when you look up again, Hans is smiling and says, we've had a little bit of success with it.
What do you mean by a little bit of success? You're talking about creating the next step of evolution.
Indeed, but we've only been able to copy it in mice. When he tries it with humans, they explode.
That's unfortunate. Doc looks... He has that, like, his eyebrows go up in shock, but he has, like, kind of a slight smirk on his face. Like, I mean, these things happen. Like, so what kind of success have you gotten in mice? Like, what kind of results have you gotten?
In some cases, they have been able to move through electrical means. In some cases, they have grown wings. In other cases, they have gained teeth that are so sharp that one bite in your finger will cut your finger off.
I'm going to start flipping through the files. Is the code for his genetic research in these files?
Some of the information is, yes. but not a full. Basically, he says all of my rodentia information is in there. But like I said, they've never been able to successfully get it to work with humans.
Now, looking through this, John, as the DM,
Mm-hmm.
would Doc have enough to go on if he did a little bit of studying, I guess, and started practicing with mice first, just because that's what all of their studies are on? Is there enough information in this folder Doc could try to replicate this same experiment back in his lab?
On mice, yes. On humans, you would have the same problems.
Right, and I'm sure that's where trial and error would come in, and Doc would have to try to tweak this particular code to make it better, like make it more usable in humans. But, I mean, the stepping stone is there for Doc to try this when he gets back to Shush, right?
There are stepping stones that would allow you to try, yes. But the one thing you do know is there are some steps that you cannot get past based on current science.
Well, that's where science breakthroughs come from, John. Doc wants to be Doc is fascinated by this, and he wants to be on the doorstep of a scientific breakthrough.
Right, exactly, and this is definitely something that would lead into that, wouldn't it?
Okay. Doc looks thrilled.
Mm-hmm.
And these files, Hans, these are for me to take back to my lab as well?
Indeed, this is part of the Unite or Die aspect, my friend. There's a reason why we are doing this. This is the point. The point is that we must prepare. And if something is coming, as everyone keeps telling us, then we need to be prepared in all ways. And if that means that humanity must genetically change, then I would recommend that we be on the cusp of that. Don't you think?
Oh, I definitely. I think in some situations and in some cases, some of us are closer than others.
Indeed. I would, if I could make one recommendation, there are a few people I would keep an eye on. There is a specific one that I would suggest as an option. Not quite yet, but maybe in a little while, that I would maybe recommend to you.
For experimentation?
No. Might be able
or
to help. Someone who I think could help you in your work eventually.
All right.
And he says, I would talk to possibly Callum Davis or Andrew Sanders, but not yet. They're still in the learning stages, but they're learning from Mr. Weaver.
All right. You said this was Callum Davis?
Davis.
And who?
Andrew Sanders.
Andrew Sanders.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Doctor, if you had to best guess, what is essentially what is the block that's blocking you from being able to successfully do this to humans as opposed to mice? Is it just something in the DNA sequencing?
It might be in the complexity of the DNA, yes. And we just don't have enough information on the human DNA strand to be able to go that far quite yet. We need, I think personally, that either Davis or Sanders are very close to being able to do it. And to be fair and to be clear to you, every mouse that we've been able to manipulate in this way dies within a day. That's the other problem. Survivability is a bit of
a... This Hans guy can tell just based off of Doc's eyes, his mind is already going 1,000,000 miles a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I appreciate your help, Doctor. Again, I have your current number. Well, actually, I do not. I have your. You said you're only here visiting.
Indeed.
Do you have a contact number that I could reach you at if I have either a breakthrough or any inquiries?
He hands you a card, and it has his university he works for in London, and his phone number on the bottom of it.
Okay, so Hans's phone number.
Phone number.
I'm writing this down in my inventory. All right. Well, I appreciate all of your help, and if I find anything else unique about this scroll, if you care to know, I'll contact you and keep you informed, since it was solely due to you that I even have possession of it to begin with.
He nods at you and says, "Keep it safe. And if you have any further questions, I would talk to the rabbi in New York named Goldsmith."
A rabbi in New York.
And he says, he gives you the actual temple he works at. Or not temple, what do they call it?
I mean, that sounds fine.
Yeah.
I don't know what the synagogue.
Yeah, there is a different synagogue. There we go. Synagogue, not temple. Temple is reformed. So, yes, synagogue. The synagogue he works at in New York.
All right. Doc will write all of this information down in his notepad, and he will close it up and put all of that back in his satchel.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not necessarily a briefcase, but it's kind of like one of those over-the-shoulder bags that hang on one side. So,
yep.
And he will extend his hand to Hans.
And Hans takes it and shakes it and says, "My appreciations. This has been a burden that I've had to carry for a long time. It is good to pass it on to others."
I'm just hoping that I can do right by Dr. Einstein, and that his trust in me was correct.
Well, the one thing I can say about Albert, he doesn't pick fools, so I'm sure you are not that.
I have been called a lot of things, but I don't think that's been on my list. And Doc will nod, and they will walk out of the cemetery, and then they will part ways. And Doc's going immediately to his plane.
Cool. All right. So you head off to your plane and head back to the New Mexico desert with new information and strange further details.
I go straight to my lab when I get back.
Mm-hmm.
And I call Bradford into my lab. And I tell, George? I tell George, get out.
Okay, George just shuffles out and leaves. And Bradford walks in.
I will debrief Bradford and give him, on the plane, I would have written up a report. I would have put into the report everything, including the scroll and the files that I have.
Mm-hmm.
But then I would have redacted the scroll and file part, like physically like blacked it out. And I will hand him that. But then I will fill him in on the redacted part.
Okay.
I will tell him that, I'll say, Bradford, I know you are my superior in this. That's why I am filling you in on the scroll and on the files that I have acquired. I will also, with your permission, can I speak frankly?
Of course.
I don't trust anyone. At least not anyone that's not in this organization. As you know, I do work for several organizations in the government. I do not trust many of them. So I think this needs to stay in-house for now.
Certainly, that is my theory as well. Should we acquire anything else? Unless we have to, I'm not giving it to anybody else.
With that being said, I am going to need a small addition. Not an addition onto my laboratory, but I need I would like to have a safe to keep these things well guarded. Also, most likely either a two-person system, like either two sets of keys or something where not any one single person has access to these items, if possible.
That sounds like a wise move.
Also, I'm going to need mice.
Okay, I can have one of our lab boys bring up some.
Okay. And I did fill him in on what the file was all about, and so he'll be able to piece two and two together.
Yeah. Yeah, and he'll know more than you will, but that's a story for another day.
Yeah. So,
and he smiles and says, good. Sounds like you made some real progress.
I do have to say one thing, and I won't proceed with it, at least yet, because I'm not careless. Something that I think might be beneficial as far as these files and the DNA sequencing, as far as human testing, is what if it has to do with those nano things that infected us? Like, what if that's a key? Or
it's could be a key. We don't know. I mean, we don't even understand what those things are yet. You know that.
I know, but you also took all the research, and I'm not allowed to study them.
He smiles and says, give me some time. I'll get them back to you soon. We've been doing our own series of testing on things. I'm sure you've taken enough of your own blood samples to do testing on those as well. I'm not that dumb.
I would... Doc fumbles with his words for a moment. And then he says, regarding the safe. Obviously, I would like one of the keys to be able to open it. I trust you are going to want one of the keys to open it.
Indeed.
If possible, I would also appreciate if Mason could have a key.
That's fine.
So, I do trust, out of everyone in this building, Mason has my utmost trust. No offense, Bradford, but that's just the way it is. So,
none taken.
All right, well, I have to go into my freezer now.
He smiles, says, I understand. And he pats you on the back as he stands up and passes you and says, I will be very interested to see what you can learn from this. This might take a while.
That's fine. I enjoy a challenge.
Good.
And I need one last thing from you, Bradford, if you're going to be leaving. Doc will go into his desk drawer.
Yep.
And grab a key, and then walk over to like a cabinet and unlock it, and then rummage through a bunch of bottles and pull out a single pill, just a small round pill. He'll put it in your hand, and he'll say, can you have George take this with a cup of water and then come back?
He smiles with that grin of, sure, not a problem. And says, I hope you're not poisoning the poor lad.
No. It's not poison this time.
This time.
Yes. It's just he's grown increasingly more hesitant to take anything that I've given him. But this one should be harmless.
I see. Okay.
And then he will lock up his cabinet and walk into his freezer.
And Bradford says, I'm sure we'll see the effects later. And he walks out. And with that, we'll call an end to this episode this week.
Look, I didn't even have to roll anything, John. But I did have to go into roll 20 and keep my notes. So that's good.
There you go. All right. So with that, Webby, where can we find you online?
You guys can follow me on Twitter at Jax Forest Walker, all one word. Also on Twitch every Friday, I stream Devin. You guys can follow me on Twitch at twitch.tv/DMWebby.
Yay! And you can find me on Twitter at LinsteadDM and on Twitch and just about everything else at similar. So please come look for us there. And until next time, everyone, have a great day. Bye.
See ya.
This has been a Distractions Media production. For more info, you can check out everything we do on distractionsmedia.com.
Did you know that Distractions has its own Twitch channel? You can actually find everything that we're doing and all of our various streamers at twitch.tv/distractionsmedia. Check us out, won't you?